Today we are talking about Flowers in the Attic by V.C. Andrews and the multiple film adaptations they have made of them. First off, I want to say that V.C. Andrews was one of my favorite authors growing up. And I know that's going to sound a little weird because, it's inappropriate at best. There's a lot of darkness, a lot of incest, and it's very emotional. Her writing is very poetic, and there's a lot of description, and it's very good at getting an emotion out of you,
right,
and just making you feel. And that's I always really appreciated that. I used to say that I like to think of my writing style as V.C. Andrews meets Charles Dickens, somewhere in there. So anyways,
cool.
I love V.C. Andrews. Anyhow, did you read this book before, or is this your first time reading it?
Yeah, so it's the first time I read the book. I saw the movie with you in like junior high, and then I didn't again until I was either high school or possibly older. And then I didn't really think about it until
I brought it back into your life again.
Yes.
The bad influence that I am. Okay. So how did you feel about reading the book?
As always, the book has so much more than is in the film, and I love that. Like, I had more of a sense of desolation and deprivation and the crazy manipulation on kind of all sides, like the dysfunction, like that was so much more rich in the book because she can take the time and really envelop you in it.
Yes.
So, and plus I read it from the point of view of a mother when I watched the movie. That I watched the 84 movie. That was what I had seen a couple of times. And I saw it from the perspective of a teenager. And I still have that perspective, and you're reading it from Kathy's perspective as a teenager. I am a mother now, and like reading through it, like I'm like, what the ever loving, like, how does a mom do that, and like I saw things in the mother and the grandmother that I didn't know to see when I was a teenager.
Definitely different reading it as a mom versus watching it as a young girl. You definitely identified with Kathy when you're younger and being, that young budding age. I think I was like 12 or so when I first saw this movie. But it is quite the experience reading it as a mom, because it's hard to imagine doing any of these things. But then you have to remember that their mom, Corinne, is not a regular person. She grew up in this very emotionally manipulative home. And she had the various austere, religious zealot kind of mother that took religious piety to the extreme and sucked all the joy out of life. And then she had this very materialistic, self-centered father that as long as you were pleasing him, he was nice to you. Right. And then she was more or less ignored. But I'm going off the book here. Until her brothers were both dead. Then suddenly she was the sole heir, and it was like, oh, well, everything counts on her. When you look at her upbringing and how she grew up, she never really emotionally developed properly. And I can sort of understand how somebody who comes from a background that's very emotionally disturbed grows up and becomes an adult. And then because she instantly went from this emotionally messed up situation, gets married at 18, and then suddenly she's in this very loving situation, and it's now a healthy relationship, but she's not emotionally healthy. And she's not mature. She's not a grown-up. And she doesn't know how to live on her own and how to do anything for herself. So then she becomes dependent upon her husband, which was totally considered normal in the 50s, which is around the time this is supposed to take place in the book and the shows. But because she's doesn't even have like the basic life skills that a regular person has, because she grew up where other people took care of her, other people did this. And then her trying to live within the means is nearly impossible for her because she's used to thinking of money like air, like it's just always there.
Right.
But for her to adjust to then having to live a normal life with her husband and having to leave all that money behind, she's never quite figured out how to do it. And that's evident in the fact that when the husband does die, spoiler for anyone, you should have read the book first, right? And
Or watched any of it. Yeah.
better have. Anyways, but when the husband dies, she literally has no skills to get a job or to do anything with, or at least she doesn't have the confidence to think that she can.
Right.
She believes that she's useless and ornamental and that she can't do anything for herself. And so she feels so useless as a person, she's willing to crawl back to this very messed up home that she came from, that she literally married her uncle to escape from. Well, her half uncle. Like how, like in the book, it's a half uncle, so it's a little less weird. I mean, and the fact that he wasn't. So, like, when I was watching the movie growing up, I got the impression that he was like 10, 15 years older than her, when in reality, he's only like 3 years older than her.
Right.
Well, I was like, that changes a lot. Then that's a lot less creepy. And you can totally understand if they're growing up in the same house together, or not growing up, but they're thrown together as teenagers. And hey, I'm really good looking, and you're really good looking, and you're not really my uncle. I mean, you kind of are. But like when they're that close in age, you can see how that would happen. It makes a lot more sense, especially since he, lived this hard life, essentially because her dad robbed him and his mom of their inheritance, which is something you don't get from the movies.
There's also, like, I put that in my notes when I was reading it, because I vaguely, like, I could remember the movie, but I had the broad strokes of the movie in my head. But there were a lot of specifics I couldn't remember, or reasons why, or how they got to this point, type of a thing. And so I have all these notes where I'm like, oh, the mom seems to be, this loving kid. Oh no, she's very narcissistic. Oh no, and I keep going back and forth. And at one point I just put, I can't figure the mom out. I think that's good. because you're not supposed to, like, you're not supposed to really understand. And you learn a little bit more and you go, oh, I understand now. And then she does something else and you're like, the heck is wrong with, like, kind of how Kathy kept doing that, where she kept like, I love you. Also, I don't trust you. Also, maybe I don't love you, but I hurt for you because I love you. Like, like that's what I kept seeing too. And I kept putting that in my notes. And eventually I'm like, forget it. I can't keep writing these notes because I would have pages of just the mom.
Like,
but she had, like, after watching both movies and reading through the book, Corinne, like you said, she finds herself to be an ornamental doll, like the Dresden dolls, like she's just, that was her skill. The mom even mentions that your mother never had skills except with the opposite sex. Grandma has her own problems. However, Corinne knew that she could get her dad's affection in a certain way. And then another handsome young man comes into the house and she can get his affection that she is so desperately desiring, affection from someone, that this was how she got it. And I can imagine being like, I have an attractive uncle. Also, I'm not in love with my uncle. But when you don't have anything else to go on, she had no healthy relationship to look at. Her brothers were gone. Her parents do not have a healthy relationship. She seems rather isolated herself. And what she knows is the romanticized teenage girl version of love. If I am attracted and have tender feelings, I must be in love. And how does an ornamental girl express love? She's manipulative. Christopher is willing to take this horrible job that takes him away from a family that he does genuinely love, and strive and stretch every penny and live in massive debt because she can manipulate through a kind of a twisted abuse of love, like, if that makes sense. Like,
so are you implying you don't believe that she genuinely loved her half uncle?
Oh no, I believe that she does genuinely, in her emotionally damaged way, as much as she is capable of, she genuinely loves those kids until it just doesn't serve her anymore. She, like, the way that she deals with Christopher is the son.
Mm-hmm.
How she's so touchy-feely, and when she sees that he's starting to doubt her, she'll like kiss him on the mouth and be like, no, come into my sphere again, because
Mm-hmm.
that's what she knows.
Feeds into her relationship with Kathy. She doesn't know how to do that with another
Right.
female. She doesn't know how to wrap around her little finger. Plus, Kathy's smart and she's perceptive. She's analytical. She can see when things don't make sense. Whereas I feel like Christopher the son is just like sort of like the archetype for the doting, loving son. That like he loves his mom. His mom is his virgin, his Madonna, his goddess. So like the woman he bases all his other relationships on with women for the rest of his life, she's perfect, even if she's not perfect because she's his mother. And so in a way, she can't do wrong until she's done really, 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 really wrong. But he still desperately wants to hold on to that because she's it, you know?
Right.
And it's partially that whole maternal loving relationship that, you know, you just bond with your mom, but it's also that sense of this is how he's going to see women for the rest of his life. It's going to affect who he becomes and the relationships that he has. I feel like I understand that. I've seen people, men in my life or around, that I can totally see that they will defend their mother no matter what she does. And she could just really mess up things. And they'll still be like, don't you dare say anything about my mother. And it's like, okay, but nobody's perfect. And you have to be willing to see when people are making mistakes, you have to call them out on it.
They have a whole series of that on like TLC or whatever. With I Married a Mama's Boy or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't seen it, but I've seen ads for it, but where they will have like the couple's relationship and the moms that are like smothers. I can't imagine, like, my mother-in-law is great. She loves her kids. But I can't imagine being like, yeah, I want to be part of this. Like,
I want to be the third person in a fifth relationship. Yeah.
Right.
No, you'd be like real all the time. Because as soon as his mom's there, she's like, you don't exist anymore.
And it's funny because the relationship that Kathy and Chris have is kind of reflective of that too. She reminds him a lot of their mama. She looks like her. And when mama's not there, when Corinne is not there, Catherine she is a good mom to the twins at 12 and 13 years old, you know, and she is good to Chris. And he sees this person who is fulfilling, much younger than she should, the roles that of a woman. And when mom's not there, he sees the like glittering star that Kathy is becoming in spite of her situation. And he loves her for it. And then his muse comes back, and it's odd he'll kind of almost throw Kathy away in the beginning. Throughout the book especially, you get a sense where he's like starting to figure it out. He has that part where they're sitting on the roof and he's like, do you think I don't see that you are the mother to these kids? You know, that you're the one that loves them and cares about them. Do you think I don't notice that she takes care of herself and we are an afterthought? I get it. Doesn't stop me from loving her. And he has that moment where he's like, I don't know, I'm I'm hooked on mom.
I'm doing my best here, but well, you got that. You do have to love that he has a true sense of loyalty and has a very strong loving streak. It's not that he's naive, it's that he trusts and he forgives and that he loves, and he trusts in that love and in his loyalty that it'll eventually pay off. And like he trusts that though she might not be 100% truthful, she has a good reason. She's thinking about us wherever she is, you know, there's a good reason why mom's not here. And you have to somewhat admire the amount of love and like loyalty and trust that he has, even though he's seeing all these signs that she's changed and that she's not the person he used to know and that she really doesn't care about them, he's still willing to look for the best. And
Right.
like within the books, they talked a lot about how he was the cockeyed optimist and was always looking for the best, and she was the cynic. And anytime he started acting like her, she's like, "Oh no, I gotta fix this. I don't want to change Chris. I want him to be him. He needs to be
Right.
him, and I'm gonna be me. I'll be the cynical one, but he needs to stay Mr. Optimistic." To Kathy's credit, she doesn't want to see Christopher wilt and fall apart and lose what's special about him
Right.
through this horrible situation. And so Kathy, in a lot of ways, she's trying to keep everybody emotionally stable despite this situation she is, despite the fact that she's 12 when you start this shit. Like the book, whatever. From 12 to 15 is when it happens for her. And that's a very young age to have all its emotional baggage put on you. And she's supporting this whole little family. She's supporting Chris so he can deal with his very unstable mother. And at the same time, she's trying to help him be like, hey, I know you love mom and I don't want to pop your bubble, but she's killing us. So, I mean, this is killing us. Being here isn't working, and you've got to work with me here. Meanwhile, she's trying to be optimistic for the twins, trying to be their teacher. She's trying to teach them manners. She's trying to do all this stuff that is way beyond her maturity level. She's the parent, and her mother is the child. Again, I feel like I can relate a lot to that. And it's a bizarre multi-generational family thing in my mom's family. But she made a joke once. She felt like she raised her mother, and there were times where my sisters and I felt like we raised our mother. So there were times where we felt like we were more mature and we had to take care of her rather than her take care of us. And I know my mom felt that way about her mother. So then I wonder if my grandma felt that way about her mom, and if it's just this weird getting less and less like dysfunctional as we go or something, or I don't know. I'll try not to do that to my child. That is my goal. So I relate on some level because I have lived in a unstable, emotionally abusive home, not to this degree, thankfully. As far as Corinne goes, I mean, I think on some level I get this obsession she has with needing male attention because her mom didn't give her attention. Her attention was all negative. So the only positive attention she got was from her father, but only if she was a certain way. If she was, really pretty and she did all the things he wanted to do and she did everything he wanted, then she got that affection, and she got attention, she got gifts and everything. And mom was a dead end. She was going to get nothing from mom. There's nothing she could do to make mom happy. So mom was always going to hate her because she was beautiful and the father loved her. So she's always going to be a rival in some very emotionally unstable sort of a way. So it's like, no wonder she went on the rest of her life to think that that's how she would find joy and happiness, was by being whatever this man needed or making this man adore her. And no wonder she goes into the arms of another man and another man. She can't not. She doesn't know how else to function.
Scott came in about 2/3 of the way through the 2014 movie. And he was like, what are you watching?
Like, what's going on here?
And so I kind of explained it to him. Oh, there's a situation, blah, blah, blah. Dad dies. They're in the attic. And then it came to the scene where like Chris and Kathy are kissing or whatever. And he's like, well, duh, because teenagers are going to teenager. Like, I was like, that's exactly right. And Corinne points that out in the beginning when they first come to the house, and she's like, why don't we give them 2 rooms? And the grandma's like, because I don't have another safe room to put them. So just boys and girls stay separate, right?
Yeah.
And then later when she walks in on them and she's like, you're sinful because they were, cut. What was it? She's like looking in the mirror and
she was trying on the brassiere for the first time.
Yeah.
She's like,
and
half naked. In the book, she is fully naked.
Right.
So in the book, it made more sense why she freaks out, because, she took a moment to like strip down and look at herself in the full length mirror, which is in the main room. They don't have one in the bathroom. and everybody else was up in the attic. She thought she had a moment to be herself, so she could just look at herself and look at how her body was changing. Because
Right.
in the book, she goes through a major change and goes from being this little girl to like this woman.
Puberty, yeah.
Which of course in the movie they can't quite show because they don't change the actress. And
Sure.
she's either already too old or much younger and doesn't get older.
Yeah.
So yeah, it made sense in the book why she flips out, because she
Right.
literally walks in, she's standing there fully naked and he's looking at her.
And he's watching. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it does make sense. When Chris kind of goes off on grandma, he's like, you put us in the same room during puberty for 2 years. You were setting us up for something. You are literally hoping to find us doing something so that you can justify yourself in calling us evil. Because guess what? We weren't evil. Like, they were kids.
It wouldn't even occur to them if they were in normal circumstances. If they were living in a normal home and they had normal separate rooms, they might notice the other one was changing, but that would be about it. And they would just tease each other about it. That would be all.
And before Catherine even had a concept of her maturing body, grandma starts in on, you're evil, you're wicked, I know what you're doing, I don't touch your body, and she's like, what? Like, I don't get it.
She's like, I don't understand what you mean. I can't touch myself.
Right.
He's thinking she's innocent. She doesn't know.
And so then when she does start to change, she's like, is this proof of my wickedness that I have grown breasts or whatever, like she wants to see her body. What makes my body so evil? Because it looks like any other young woman's body. Like, how am I evil, but grandma's not? Because I noticed grandma's got the goods too. Like, like.
It's like, so breasts are the evidence of evil.
Right. Like she never would.
If you're a truly evil person.
I don't know how normal it is, but I feel like most girls don't feel the need to like stand in front of a mirror and do ballet moves and stuff just to see their body, because we see our body, we grow, we know, you've already had the like, look at yourself, understand yourself, talk to your mom or someone, and grow and move on, right? Like,
or like they grow up with other women and they'll see other women in passing through, like changing or being around your mother when she changes and stuff, and so it's less weird because you've seen it in other women that you trust around you, and so there isn't so much this fascination. But because she's been denied that relationship with her mother at this crucial time, and her mom comes in and brings her a box of tampons, and it's like there for like 5-minute momming. This is what she does, like the 5-minute mom. And she's like, oh, honey. And she's like, oh, I care. Oh, and this is a special time for you. Blah, blah. Here's your box of tampons. And oh, I got to go. And then she's gone off to go live her fabulous life. And so that's what Kathy has. That's it.
Right. And if she had had a more normal growing up, then she might not have even been in a compromising position to begin with, even if like Chris did walk in or something. But then I don't know. Like if I have a little kid that's like, if I'm like, don't do that, that's wicked and evil and bad, and then they're like, is it? Why? And they, and you're like, ugh, why did you even set them up? Why did you put the thought in their head and already condemn them for it? Because it was in your head. Like,
it's sort of like the catch-22 that like if you wonder if they would have done the thing if you hadn't warned them that they shouldn't do the thing in the first place.
There's a difference between being like a good mom and like, okay, here's a situation that I don't want you to be unprepared for. Good mom. And then there's you are wicked and evil because you will have these thoughts if you haven't already. How many times have you let him use you?
Use me.
Oh, he likes art. Do you pose for him naked?
She's all, what are you talking about? So I love her response because she's like, I don't know what you're talking about, because she's totally innocent. She doesn't understand. You pervert, you sicko. What's wrong with you, Grandma?
You're casting your own guilt onto me because from what I see, Grandma's got a nasty mind.
Grandma, you're a sicko.
Yeah. And I kind of do get that she's like, I don't know, we brought Christopher, the uncle, right? The half brother, brought him into our home apparently relatively good-naturedly, like she's like, I feel like we did wrong by him, and so I tried to make it right. I brought him into this home, and how does he repay me? He sleeps with my daughter.
Yeah.
From her perspective, I do see that. Like I can see her going, and now I have you guys who are the result of that, you know.
And that one looks just like him and is like even named Christopher. So it's like,
right.
Say his name. It's like, and I won't even look at the one that looks like his father.
And so far, and so far her husband is willing to accept the love of Corinne in the way that, because Corinne is essentially seducing, even if not sexually, like she's seducing dad in a manner. And then he's indulging in that. So her husband indulges in that. This brother-in-law indulges in that, and because he could have been the good guy, he could have been the one that's like, I'm going to be the adult in the situation and take myself out of it. Could have, didn't. And that from her perspective, he has now become just another dirty guy. And now here is Chris, and she's like, and of course you're looking at her, how often do you do that? Because now I just think you're all filthy and gross. And
like, oh man, from the male from birth, there's forms knowledge of evil, wicked.
Well, was there more in the book specifically that kind of was something that stood out to you?
Things I liked about the book so I do like getting more in depth, like just the magnitude of how long they're there. It's one thing to be told that they're in the attic for 2-3 years. It's another thing to like feel it and be there with them and to feel the days that they didn't have food and the weeks. And also the whole thing with the tar. It's not in the 1980s movie, but in 2014 one. And I feel like the way they did it in that one was a little bit like sort of an afterthought. It wasn't as like traumatic it was in the book.
Right.
The book was quite like, oh my gosh, she poured tar on her head.
Right. And she apparently injected her with something to keep her
asleep,
non-responsive.
Yeah, so she wouldn't wake up. I was like, that makes more sense doing it that way. So otherwise, like, how would you not notice this hot stuff was on your head? So that I liked, because then like I do like that she's like, I think you'll be the one that cuts it out too, because that was her. She already had in her head what she was going to do, that she was going to come back and return to her and force him to cut it off.
He's like, I'm going to do this for you. They took the time to actually wash it out, even if it's still like not the vibrant color that it was, but they
took
the time, and it's pulling her hair out, and then he cuts just the front part, so then she can wrap up her head and make it look like, oh, I'm so embarrassed because look at my bald head. And she even says, like, later on, she's like, now that it's growing in, it's all curly, and she's like, I always wanted curls, like hidden blessings, right? Hidden miracles. Never knew that if I cut my hair short, I would have these beautiful curls, and now it frames my face and I'm even more beautiful. Thanks, Grandma. Like,
thanks, Grandma. Take that.
Like, I don't want to deny you of your hair, and I don't want to let Grandma win. Also, we have to stop this because she's going to keep torturing us. And so I'm going to cut just the front of your head. Like, he like solves the problem as well as he can, even though ultimately Grandma didn't actually care. Like, she got her, she did what she wanted. But he's still like, he's like, I'm going to find a way to salvage everything I can of this situation.
Feel guilty. Like he, as soon as he saw that she was undressed, he should have like turned around and went right back on and been like, Kathy. And plus, like, he's a good brother and like he's a good person. Like, deep down, he wants to do the right thing, and he's not a bad person. Like, he wants to help people. So yeah, I did like that. So in the book, they leave their home at night and they sneak in, and nobody knows they're there but the grandma. That's it. And so it's like nobody can know that they're there. And it's this whole elaborate thing where they have to go upstairs in the attic so that the maids can clean once a week, and they have to take everything out. And like the mom keeps bringing them more and more stuff too. So it's like a lot of work. But if you think about it, they probably just took it all up into the attic, and that's where they used it. So it's like you couldn't leave anything, or somebody would be like, who's been in here?
she does talk about how like there comes a point that the room is so cramped. It's not a huge room. All this stuff that like the room is kind of full, and then mom is bringing this giant ornate like deluxe dollhouse and a TV set and whatever.
A guitar
And
and a banjo and like
yeah.
all these presents and games. So like the more stuff she brings, the more they have to hide. Right? So it's like we'll put it up in the attic.
I liked also that the grandma at one point like, why is this table so clean? And Kathy's like, I wiped off our fingerprints, like trying to impress grandma, you know? Now it looks like it hasn't collected dust for a month. She's like, how did you expect this to go? Like, either they ask questions about fingerprints or they notice it's a very clean room. Like,
Yeah.
what do you want from me? Yeah.
Yeah. There's no pleasing grandma. I also loved they went in detail about the Christmas gift they made for grandma. And they're trying to like thank her for giving them real flowers. So she randomly gives them real flowers for their fake garden. And like her and Kathy kind of had a moment. And then so they're like, oh, she can't be that bad. She gave us flowers. Let's make her a present, which I think was very sweet. And that they were willing to put all this effort into making this present for the grandma. And it's a really sad moment in the book because it's like, here is this opportunity for this cold, loveless, sad old woman to have some joy in her life because these children could be her happiness. They could give her joy. They would love her if she would let them. And she could finally get the relationship that she really needs. She's not going to get that with Corinne because she's already made Corinne feel like she's the enemy her whole life. And Corinne is messed up. You know, she's entirely self-centered and is competing with her for her husband's attention. But meanwhile, these kids, without being asked at all, with no expectations really, made her a gift with her own hands, something that she's probably never had, because I doubt Corinne ever made her anything, because that's not how she was raised and that's not who she is.
Right.
And then they give her this gift that they put all this effort into, and this is the moment where she could have grown as a person. She could have built a relationship with her grandchildren, but instead she just turns away and walks out.
Yeah.
And it's just heart-wrenching because you're like, oh my gosh, you just
she couldn't like but what is she gonna do? Bring down this obviously child designed piece of art from the attic and be like, don't worry about it?
I didn't really think about that, but you're right. Like, what would she say? How would she explain that to anybody?
She couldn't take it. And I liked the 2014 grandma because you see it in her. That actress, I should have looked up her name, but you know, I just forget it if I did. From the very beginning, like she kind of has this like, crap, guys, I need to hate you. So just understand. Don't try to make me like you because I can't. And when she gives them the flowers, like it almost is the way that the way that it's portrayed. It almost is like kind of the way that I saw it in my mind when I was reading the book, that she's like, against my better judgment, because it turns out I have a soul despite myself, take some flowers. And when she gives them the donuts, it's cookies in one of the movies, but in the book it was the frosted donuts. And she's like,
I wouldn't eat them though.
I wouldn't if I were you, you know.
Yeah, she doesn't say your mom's poisoning you, but she warns them against it.
Right. And like she has that kind of, there are several times that I remember the broad strokes. And then as I'm reading through it, I'm like, more and more, I see the kind of narcissistic manipulation of the mother and the good person that is almost dead within the grandma. Like she has almost killed the good person within herself, and she kind of resents the children for bringing it out in her. I thought that I had killed that part of me, and now I'm gonna have to beat it back out of me, you know, like
or also it could be that she's like, they're forcing her to kill what's left of what's good in her because of what she's having to do for her daughter. Because she does have a sense of right and wrong. She does have this sense of repentance, and that ultimately she knows that doing this to anybody would be wrong. But she has to compartmentalize and be like, these guys aren't really people. They're products of sin. And like when they act like people she could actually love, and even though she doesn't know how to love, it starts to mess with her sense of right and wrong. but she has
Right.
she can't have feelings about them, or she can't do what she's doing. But she doesn't
Right.
feel like she has a choice, because literally the husband doesn't want to leave her his money. He wants to give it to Corinne, but under the right circumstances. So in some ways, the grandma's sort of trapped in this too, because she's having to keep these kids here and do all these things to appease Corinne and the father. And it's this whole, but at the same time, she's telling herself that she's justifying it because she's teaching Corinne a lesson, and she's teaching these children a lesson, and she is punishing the sinners.
So yeah, there are a number of things that Corinne chooses that I just don't understand how she could choose. But she does say something in the beginning when they're at their home still. Dad has died. She has been writing letters. She's been trying to do what she can. She's trying to like work out the bills. Everything is going to have to be repossessed. And she says something about the children are dear to her because they are Christopher's children.
Mm-hmm.
They are the physical representation of his love for her. When I read that, I'm like, oh, she doesn't care about them as individuals. You know, each of my children, I love individually for themselves and more broadly because we are a family that we chose to be, right?
Yeah.
Corinne makes it very clear before they ever even leave to go to grandma's house, I love you because you are proof that your father loved me.
And your father loves you, and your father loved that I was the mother of his children. And
right.
She was giving him what he wanted, and what made him happy was her being the mom and providing him that family that he didn't get to have.
Yep.
And it all worked out fine as long as daddy was around. But then once he was gone, suddenly these kids are now baggage instead of her family.
Yeah. Well, and not in the beginning. And in the beginning, it does kind of feel like she's clinging to them, right? She's visiting them twice a day, and she wants to bring them gifts because they're so miserable and unhappy. And she's like, I don't know how else to spend the day. So here are some other things to do, you know. But then as she gets the love of someone else, the love of the new guy,
Mark Winslow.
But once she has his affection, she doesn't need Christopher's love anymore.
No.
And she doesn't need the kids anymore because she didn't really love them for themselves.
You know, they were no longer necessary, and she could find somebody else. You're going to be here. Or you'll go back down and watch her movie. Make faces? Yeah, she makes faces.
Is she your Carrie?
This is my Carrie. Yes. Oh yeah, she totally. So that was fun about reading the book. I feel like, so let's compare the movies. Now, I feel like we've talked about the book.
Sure.
The book is great. I will say that I feel like the ending is anticlimactic. And, you know, although realistic, and it makes a lot more sense in some ways than the movie endings, than the 1980 movie ending, at least.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a letdown. But so talking movies, I feel like the 1980 ones, they really got the characters down. Like I feel like the Carrie and Corey in that, I love the Corey in that. The little blonde haired, curly hair,
little curly,
was so precious. And I was like, how can you not love that little boy? And then the fact that the sweet one, the nicest one of them all, most innocent, that's the one that dies, that just breaks your heart, because you're like, no. And I love that Carrie's the complete opposite of him. And she's like, you don't mess with Carrie, and you don't mess with her twin. And I do love that moment where like Carrie goes right up to grandma and she screams in her face. She's like, take that, grandma. I feel like the 1981, all the actors that play those characters, those four kids especially, they felt perfect for those roles. I feel like Christopher was perfect. Yeah, they were older in that movie. And so like it was less believable that they went through puberty in that time. So clearly they already had. But I do feel like all those actors were perfect for their parts. Even like Corinne, and I love the grandma in that one too. She's very no nonsense, little slow motion.
They kept calling her steel and slate and like using terms of gray things, but it's always like hard, you know, stone and
steel eyes. And yeah. So I do really like that about that movie. I feel like they cast the perfect people as far as like they understood the characters and they were those characters and they were the perfect embodiment of what was in the book. It is interesting how differently they decided to tell the story. There's a lot of things that they cut out in the 1980s version. It was very like sort of glossed over. They missed a lot of the things. They didn't do the tar. They didn't do the changing. He was just talking to her while she's in the tub, but she's fully covered in like bubbles and stuff.
Yeah. They kept the kids very innocent. When I saw the movie, I was on board. I liked that movie, you know. And then as I was reading the book, I was like, that's how it is. You are there 24/7, 365, twice and a half over. They are always there. There is not a different place for them to be. There's going to be times that even they are
like the attic. There's still even a big attic, which is huge. I personally always thought that attic was super cool. And I was like, I want an attic like that. I don't want to be locked in it, but like, I want to go play in an attic like that. That would be fun.
Yeah. I have yet to actually physically, personally be in an attic that I could even like, that I, at 4'11", can stand up in comfortably. Like,
attics, you don't see those kind of attics everywhere.
Yeah. Attics for me have only ever been crawl spaces, or they're the, like, my grandma's house has a second story that like the first story is like this. You can't see me. Where am I? The first story is like this wide. The second story is only this wide because there's the attic triangles on the sides, right? Where the roof comes down. And so it is the second story of the house. And someone pointed out like recently, a couple years ago, that technically that's the attic. Like they call it attic storage on the sides. And I'm like, but that's not an attic. Like,
yeah, it feels like it has to be above everything, right?
Yeah, I have never been into something like that, but as cool as it would be, it's only cool when you have the freedom to choose it.
Yeah, and I would go books up there, and I would ride on that swing. And I'm talking about all things talking about. I'm like, this sounds awesome and fun, except for they can't leave. If we took out that part, this would sound like my idea of a wonderful play space. But
yeah.
I'm weird. I would love to go into an attic that has all this old stuff. I love old stuff and all those old old clothes. And I'm like, woohoo, treasure hunt! And like just going through stuff and playing hide and seek in all those trunks and things and like all the mirrors. I would have a blast. It would be like having your own like thrift store antique shop upstairs.
Yeah, it would be cool to be able to choose it.
Yes.
But it does kind of speak to like, even when they have all their toys and whatever, and Kathy is having her like internal monologue and she's like, I want the stuff that money can't buy me because I see what it is to live in money. Like everything is finely upholstered. Everything is, even though it's not a big enough room for all the stuff we have in it, it is technically, if this was just my room, this would be a gigantic room,
Yeah.
I have couture clothing.
Yeah.
But for my brother to see me in,
my mom's like, oh, don't you like it? She's like, I have no place to wear it. So like, what's the point of having this fancy dress that I'll never wear?
I do like the 87 movie, that I think for as much as it is condensed, you do still feel all of the things you're supposed to feel, with the exception of having seen now the book and also the 2014. I like the other Corinne better.
Oh,
the Corinne
you
in
like
the
having Heather Graham as Corinne?
Yeah. Okay. Comparing the two, I feel like she's younger or appears younger. It has that more youthful beauty that they keep talking about, like, oh man, she's actually almost 40 and yet she still looks as youthful and beautiful as the day she left, the eye, like the like crazy eyes,
Yes. Like Heather Graham does crazy well, but at the same time, she can be charming and she can be sweet and she is pretty.
Right.
And like, you could see how, I feel like there was a lot of play with emotion. Like you saw more range of her feelings and what she was going through and like all the weird things she was having to deal with.
The Corinne and the grandmother, I feel like those two actresses embodied those parts very well. They told you the characters through how they said what they said, or how they looked when they said what they said, or how they, like, even like with Corinne, like in the beginning, like you see that she's like, these are my babies, mom, back off. And then eventually she gets like the fake smile plaster, darlings, hello, and you see a little bit more of that. And when she turns kind of cold and shuts down and is disconnected, like you see her broken. You see that when she sees Corey sick, I guess is what I'm thinking of. When you just see her like snap, and she has this moment of like, okay, this is how it's going to be. I can't love these kids anymore.
This is real.
You know, because she was doing it. She was the one poisoning her children. And it became real right then. I think that's what I like about Heather Graham. This clearly abused, emotionally dysfunctional, beautiful woman who is living in absolute denial. And you go, oh, even if I don't agree with her, I see why she did what she did. And that moment that she's like, of course he's sick. I'm poisoning him. I just murdered my son. And the grandma goes, this child does need to go to the hospital. I just watched another movie that is also based on a book with some friends of ours. It's the Where the Crawdads Sing.
Okay, yeah.
And we're coming out of the theater and this friend goes, I hate it when they expect the audience members to assume. And I'm like, what? He felt like the police should have interrogated someone. They didn't even mention whether they did or not. And he's like, why didn't the police interrogate her? And I'm like, maybe they did. And he's like, now you just have to assume that they did. Of course they didn't ask her position because they already had written her off. So I'm like, yeah, they made it clear and obvious. They shouldn't have to spell it out. And I kind of took like the opposite point of view of that he did. I appreciate that in this book and in the way that the 2014 Mother and Grandmother, you come to your own conclusions. You watch them and you go, she's crazy. Is she crazy? I think she's crazy. You know, did the grandmother legitimately want her to take the kid to the hospital? Did she have that like moment of like, Corinne, this child needs a doctor? Or did she have that moment of like, get him out and bury him, doctor? You know, like you have to make that decision.
Yeah, they never tell you.
You know, do the kids go too far? Or were they, you know, as innocent as anyone in that position is going to be? You need to make that decision. You have to evaluate your own positions and make that choice. And I kind of like that. It's not treated pedantically. When her husband died, why couldn't she let herself love the children a little bit?
Yeah.
Even if she was
why
too
didn't
proud
she come up and say, hey guys, you can come out now?
Yeah. Even if she was too proud. I mean, she could get rid of servants. So pull all those servants out, get new
why
servants.
Not be like, hey, I'm going to put you on a train. I'm going to give you this money. We've arranged for another place for you to live. And you're going to go live in this house over here. And because she's willing to provide them the basic essentials to live.
Yeah.
She's not like, she does at one point starve them. But
to teach them.
But like, she was like, oh, from the get-go, she's all, I'll provide you food and shelter, but never kindness or love. But it's like, you could do that in a situation far away where no one will ever know. Chris
brings it up at one point, I think with his mom, but he's like, here's the thing, we'll just go. And then we won't be your problem anymore. You could have sent us to boarding school for whatever reason. You decided not to do that. So you know what? We'll just go. We'll leave. We'll steal out in the night, just the way we came in, and we're gone. And we're out of here. And we're not your problem anymore. It was interesting and yet disappointing in the book is that, you know, they have the rat, they have the poison donuts with them. They get out. And after the mom's already gone and she's already been married, you know, they find out the grandpa's already been dead all this time. And like they get out. But like, there's less of a sense of urgency. They have the evidence. They can go to the police. They could say, hey, these guys poisoned us. My grandmother, my mother kept us locked up and they killed my little brother. And their excuse for not doing it was they didn't want the publicity. They talked about how she was going to get revenge. She was going to make her pay for it. And then she doesn't make her pay for it. You turn the information in, then everyone's going to know who you are. And suddenly it's going to be all over the place. But you're guaranteed to go into foster care
and have a home. And yeah, they might not all be together, which I think is probably like maybe the biggest factor is they won't be together after all this, because he's 18 now. He's not going to go in foster care.
Maybe in the 50s, 60s, maybe he had to be 21 to legally adopt.
Yeah,
but,
I don't know, maybe, but like
I was
18, maybe he could have just kept him. Anyways,
yeah,
it seemed kind of weak to me that that there was no revenge on the grandma, no revenge on the mother. That was very anticlimactic. They just leave one day.
I did love in the 87 version coming in on mom's wedding day
Yeah,
and being like, bam, we exist. Also, eat the
Hey,
cookie,
Mom.
mom, eat the cookie. And then she like falls and dies, and they're like, peace out, everybody. Love that.
I love that as a kid. And like, it wasn't until I was a little older that I go, wait a second, no one stopped him and said, hey, you just pushed that woman over. I'm like, oh, I didn't push her. Like, nobody tried to stop him from leaving. Even if it was the grandma was there and was like, let him go, don't worry about it, or something, then that would have been like the grandma finally did something for them. And that's why nobody says anything, because grandma says they can leave.
The only thing I could think about that is everybody was sitting there going, what just
happened?
What?
Like they just really they took off and got out of there before anybody realized she was dead. Maybe.
Maybe as everybody else is running to see Corinne, they just leave. Maybe.
Yeah.
And they don't know who those kids actually are. So
yeah, only the grandma knows. And then it's like, who knows where they go. So I do like the ending in that movie better in that sense. The one thing they did in the 2014 one that I really liked is they actually took the fact that the grandma was claustrophobic and they used it.
Yeah.
They talked about that in the book. And I'm like, it would be great to lock her in that stairwell.
That's exactly what I thought too.
Don't do it in the book. And they didn't do it in the other movie, but they did it in that movie. And I was like, you know what? Thank you. Because that's what was missing.
I love the imagery. The very last scene of that movie is the grandmother now looking out the window of the attic. She's trapped in the attic because she purposely chose the place that the servants couldn't hear the kids.
Yeah.
Which means they can't hear her. She is now trapped in that prison, and seeing that imagery of this woman now, like even if eventually somebody sees her waving out the window, like
she still has a sense of panic, and she gets to feel that sense of for a moment.
The final image that the children see as they run away is grandma trapped in the attic. It's the perfect. It's like Man in the Iron Mask when they put the other guy in the mask at the end, and you're like, yes, that just needs to happen.
In that aspect, that was satisfying. So I like that. Overall, like I think it's just a really enticing story, and it's. I mean, I get why they made it more innocent in the 80s version, but like I feel like you do lose a lot of like what emotionally goes on with the kids when they took out all like the ancestral and more imperfect things out of it. So I do like that the 2014 had more of that relationship. They showed how much all this craziness affected them.
Well, and they left it open for you to decide. Like I said, like in the book at one point, Kathy's like, no. And Chris is like, it's kissing. And I like that the movie kind of used that, where you see the kiss, and then it's up to you to decide. Did these kids just inappropriately kiss and or did they decide we are mom and dad now? They kind of left that like, you decide how far that went. If you're disturbed by the fact that it could have gone farther, then it didn't. It didn't for you. In this case, Kathy is telling you her story. You need to fill in the gap of where do you think that went? Because Kathy's not going to tell you. Was the grandmother, the mother, both, neither crazy? Were they fully aware of what they were doing and just that selfish? You need to fill in those gaps. And I like that. Personally, I like that. I like that the author or the director or whoever, whatever media it is, they are expecting you to be invested in this story. And I'm there for that. I love that. So
yeah, I agree. In the book, he does rape her. Like totally forgives them. To be like, oh, this is the whole, oh, it's not your fault. A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. Oh, she was asking for it because she was wandering around in her leotards.
Right.
It's like, no, she wasn't. but the fact that she's like, oh, it's not your fault. It was my fault too. It was much to me. I could have stopped you. I do prefer that it was a consensual situation. I mean, I know that's still messed up because they're still brother and sister, but like,
Yeah.
It sits better having it be that she consented to that relationship, and it wasn't
Right.
he went crazy and mad and raped her in like a crime of passion kind of a thing, and then they have to go back to
Yeah.
having a regular relationship.
Right.
But like, one thing I want to point out is I kind of get where they're coming from though. When you've been trapped in prison for 3 years, suddenly like the rules of society, the notion that I can't have these feelings for this person that I'm related to, suddenly seems very inconsequential because literally you're not living any of the normal functions of life. And
Right.
like suddenly it's very subjective about who you can love. Plus, they put them in that situation. They sort of formed that relationship. Like when
Right.
it came to the mom and the half uncle, that was their choice. They could have just been like, yeah, I'm attracted to you, but this is really inappropriate. And they could have denied that. They had space, they had things they could have done to avoid that. In the kids' case, they're literally stuck with each other.
Yeah.
And they're going through this emotional, hormonal teenage time. And
Right.
they do love each other. They do care about each other because they're happy to be, they're already playing mom and dad together. The next step is husband and wife.
Right. They are denied everything. Like from the beginning, when the grandmother calls them evil before they have even done anything to be evil, specifically like punishes them already for what they have not done and would not have in any normal situation been likely to have done. Two things can be true at once. I don't agree with it. Also, I get it. It was originally a night, and then it was maybe a few nights, maybe a week.
Maybe.
It might be a full month. It has been 2.5 years or whatever, and it's never going to end. It's never going to end. It was their Auschwitz, right? This was it for them. There was nothing else. And in that point of view, like I can see a teenage boy who has never had any other outlet going, I will never have any other outlet.
Yeah.
I have this one. But the same with Kathy is that she's stuck. She's there.
Doing the same thing he's going through, but the girl version, where she's having all these fantasies, and that's why she kisses Bart, her stepdad, when he's sleeping. She also has no outlet, no way, no one else to crush on.
Well, and if she doesn't forgive Chris, they're living in the same room still, and there is no end date. And she, of all of them, is convinced they are going to live and die in this room. So what else is she going to do?
Yeah, she doesn't have a choice in a way. At the same time, she genuinely loves and cares about him, so she wants to help him. So she's put in this really weird place.
Impossible place.
Another thing I want to point out that I really like that was in the book is that at first the mom tells them, okay, so we're getting out of here, so you're just going to be here for a little while I go take a typing class, and like I get some education, and like until I am ready to get a job as a secretary. And I like that because that was even more feasible, that they're like, okay, yeah, we can stay here and live here while we're waiting for you to get your education. And slowly over time, it just went away.
Yeah.
It went from like, that's what the plan was. And then it's like, oh, well, I'm just gonna marry this guy instead. I got married and I love my honeymoon. And that's for 12 months. And why couldn't she just told them that? Hey, I'm getting married and I'm going on my honeymoon to Europe.
It kind of speaks to, she was done with them. She didn't need them anymore. They were kind of her pets. That's kind of what I saw. Like, they were her pets. She walked in the door going, darling, like expecting them to jump up and down and kiss her face. And, and then she throws a fit when they're upset. And she's like, ungrateful children.
How dare you? I brought you all these expensive presents from Europe because I felt guilty. How dare you be so excited about this random crap you don't need?
Right. As much as the grandmother was trying to dehumanize them, even though she was seemingly starting to see them as more and more human.
So Corinne's doing the opposite, where they were human to her, and then she's having to dehumanize them. And like she's having to kind of just make them separate. Like it's almost like she's living in like a weird fantasy life, and the kids are living in in reality. They have more of a sense of what's really going on, and they're becoming the grown-ups while she's like reverting back into this childlike state. I don't know. I guess like if you were that like detached emotionally, and she can reason that she's not really killing her kids. I guess in a way, it makes more sense to me that the mom in the 80s version of the movie would poison her kids and kill them because they're in the way. I got a sense that there was a point where she still cared and she was still trying to keep that relationship going, and a point where where it was over. She was like, oh well, they no longer love me, I'm done. And that's when she started poisoning him.
It almost felt like, oh, maybe it was a mercy killing. Like they're going to be here for the rest of their life. They're going to be tortured and slowly wither away for the rest of their life, or I can help them now. You get the sense that from the beginning, from the letter in the beginning, it was the plan. These kids were never getting out. All of these stories about when he loves me again or when he dies, or that was clearly never going to happen. Like you see, even when they're walking up to the house and the mother says, let them walk, the air will do them good. God knows they won't be seeing it again for a long time. Yeah. Like she drops a hint that she knew that they were going to be hidden away, that in the same way that she loved them for being evidence of her husband's love for her, in that same way, now they are evidence of her husband's love for her. Yeah. And now it's a bad thing. Something she has to hide. And so how come the plan was not from the beginning that the Dollengangers kids are going to go live with some random person? Like, why was that not the plan? Because then when Corinne Foxworth goes to go visit the Dollengangers kids over there, nobody would have cared.
The grandma had her own money. Well, maybe the grandma's like, I'm not going to spend money to take care of your dumb brats or something.
Right.
But like, she is essentially doing that anyways in that house. So she won't have to worry about it or have to feel guilted by it. Or
right. Exactly. Like as much as they're like, you're going to live in this room and I will provide you food and I will provide you shelter. I will never provide you love. And the mom is like, but I love my kids, but then she can't see them for certain periods of time or whatever. Why was not the plan from the beginning to put them somewhere relatively nearby? They didn't have to know anything. They never had to know that they were Foxworths.
Yeah.
Mom could have said, I'm going to have you living with friends. Same story. I'm going to have you living with friends while I'm trying to make life better, by going to the school or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then she still would have had the same need to come and see them, to make excuses to come and see them. Yeah. And eventually she would have had the same drifting away as she married someone else and she became Corinne Foxworth again and not Corinne Dollenganger.
But yeah, right. I think you're right. I think the tension was always that they had to die. Not that they need to go somewhere else or they could be living someplace else or disappear. They need to be gone. Right. And one of the things they showed, one of the most poignant images in the 80s version of the movie is like after Corey's died and you show them burying Corey and they pan out and there's 3 more graves already dug. And you're like, oh my gosh. Yeah. They're planning to kill them. And like I remember that giving me chills as a kid, be like, yeah, run for your lives, guys.
Well, in the 87 version, the groundskeeper and the butler did know about the kids.
Yes. In the 80s version they did. And there was things I liked about that and didn't like about that because it made sense that there was more people trying to keep them in, but it also makes it more sinister in that literally no one else knows they're there. So like the 2014 version, right? They're like, we're Corinne's kids. He's like, oh my gosh. She's like, yeah, run, get out of here.
It's like, get out before they send me after you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that. Where I had seen the 87 version before reading or anything else. When I was reading the book, like, I was like, wait a minute. They went to a Christmas party and they were in the cabinet for the Christmas party. He was like scouting around the house. He was like all these things that I'm like, what? I don't remember this. And they do get out once they try to escape out the window once. They do get out into the house once and look around in the 87 version. But then like in the book when I'm reading and they're like running away to the lake and they go home and I'm like, what?
Well, because
because
the kids are asleep, and then like they try to drag the kids out, and the kids would.
Mhm.
So it was almost like the first time they snuck out was to see if they could.
Right,
So to like be normal for a second, and they have to go
right.
back to the twins,
Test it. Yeah.
and then they go back
Yeah.
and try to convince the twins to come out there, and like the twins freak out. They won't go out on the
Right.
roof. So it's like, well, crap, we can't do that. They're like, well, maybe we'll make slings and we'll like toss them on our backs or something. It made more sense in the book why they couldn't just leave.
Also, they're coming from child minds. Like, as a 39-year-old woman, I'm going, well, here's a solution that they could have considered. And, and I liked one of them. At one point, they like take the hinges off, thinking that from the very beginning. Are they hidden hinges? Are the hinges on the outside of the room? Yeah. Why did they not just take the hinges off the door? Like, I was like, that's the first thing that you think of when you're like, I'm trapped in a room. Can you get to the hinges? Problem solved. Like, and so I like when that's finally addressed, but then why don't you just leave? And also where the mother seems just, what's the word I'm looking for? Unforgivably selfish. How do the kids not just run away? When I was reading and Chris makes it down and there's no dogs to attack him, of course he runs. Oh my gosh, this is it. I'm going to watch Chris completely fall from grace and run away. And he didn't run away, got Corinne down, and then they went to the lake and then they went back. And I'm like, whoa.
This is not what I'm expecting.
Because I might have run if I was in that situation. I might have been like, hey, I'll see if I can help you from the outside.
Well, yeah, you could have gone and told the authorities. I mean, you were having these children hidden up your attic, and like the cops would have to come and check and see what was going on. And they would at least be like, we have to go see the attics. It may just be a hoax, but we have to do it. Like, that's one way he could have like saved them from the outside.
Right. Which I think from my point of view, but I don't know if I would have thought of that when I was or I guess he was 17 at that point. Still, I don't know that I would have thought of that. He's been conditioned to like, there is no one else looking out for these twins. If for whatever reason, if the cops are in grandpa's pocket, then he just killed his siblings.
The thing is that the mom had him so convinced that it's just a little while longer. Grandpa could die any day, any moment. She's going to come back for you. And like in the 2014 version, how she's like, what am I doing? What is this place doing to us? Let's just go. We'll just pick our things, let's just leave right now. But realize if we go, we can't come back. Like she left it up to them. And part of me is like, why don't you just leave? She just said, let's go. Like they could have walked out at that moment and saved all of their lives, including the mom. I believe that she genuinely meant that in that moment. She was having a moment of clarity. And she was, this is ridiculous. This wasn't worth it. And she was back to the best part of her right in that moment. And if they had left, they would have been okay. At that point, it's because of Christopher and like his faith in her and like the whole, well, but the grandpa can die any minute. Everything I've gone through will feel like it was for nothing if they don't have money.
And that was it. That was the one comment that this 2 years that we lost would be worthless if we go right now. And I couldn't remember who said it. I couldn't remember how it was expressed, but I remember that concept was introduced right there. That like, let's go. This is not worth it. Also, if we leave, it was worth nothing. Yeah. We wasted 2 years of torturous living for nothing. Yeah. If we stick it out for a little bit longer, at this point, what's another month?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's that kind of thinking that kept them there for 3 years. It's that kind of thinking that like through the mom's manipulation and like the grandma's manipulation and their own manipulation of themselves to try to accept the situation and normalize it, that they kept going and then they stayed. So anyways, I think it's a really interesting story. I get why it's so fascinating. And there's a whole slew of other books that come after and that are like written from perspective, or they're Christopher's journals that are written from perspective of Christopher. So you get like the Flowers in the Attic, and then the story afterwards, I think, is Petals in the Wind, is like what happens to him after Flowers in the Attic, that are written from Christopher's perspective. And I haven't read all the rest of these, but I am planning to now. I'm like, you know what? I have to read all these. And then there's also books that are supposed to be like prequels that are about the grandmother, the great grandmother.
There's a mini series or a series, I don't know, that's called Flowers in the Attic, The Origin, that is about the grandmother. I think it starts with the grandmother and grandfather, they're courting, that's the opening premise of the miniseries. I saw that it existed and I didn't watch it.
Yeah.
Again, because Shark Week.
Shark Week.
And it's only Wednesday, folks.
If
I guess
you're
it's
a shark
technically
person, you just got a Shark Week it. So
my same dinosaur lover from Jurassic Park, she also sits down and watches Shark Week with me. So
there you go.
We have done nothing.
No regrets. We're good.
Yep.
Right. Well, I plan on watching the miniseries at some point, and there's also some movies made of the other books later on. One of them has James McAvoy in it, plays one of his grown-up sons. So I'm like, well, great. I gotta read the books, and then I'm gonna watch those movies. Because I went and saw there's a whole bunch of VC Andrew movies made, and I haven't seen. So I'm like, done.
Cool.
I know I've read another series from hers. The first one's called Dawn, I think. I read that one, and I read some of the subsequent books for that series, and that's like similar tone, but a different weird family dynamic, a different family, more modern. But that one was really good too. Okay, so that is Flowers in the Attic. Do you have any plans for our next episode here?
Well, real quick, where are you on book
3?
4? 3.
Book 3 in
I
the
was going to say
series.
book 4.
It feels like book 4. It should be like book 8 or whatever. Should be finishing the series. What's wrong with me? I'm getting close. So, I mean, I guess I can make it like my push to finish it, that our next thing is our interview and me announcing the release of my 3rd book. All right. So next time we're discussing my books. Yay. Right under R.J. Craddock. It's the 13 Tribes of Cain series. First book is The Forsaken. The second one is The Offspring. The 3rd one is The Decree. And I will have like an official release date by the time we do our next episode. So you have that time to read the first 2 books, and then we can discuss them, or at least discuss the first one, whatever we want to do. But yeah, anyways, so that'll be fun, because technically I am an author, and Rae is going to be a famous screenwriter. She's going to adapt all of our
famous one.
Famous. And she's going to write these amazing screenplays.
Our next time we meet, we're going to be talking with Ruth, R.J. Craddock, for her The Forsaken, the first in the series of the 13 Tribes of Cain series.
I'm Ruth Craddock.
I'm Rae Davidson.
And we'll see you next time.